You have had a long and tiring day. Perhaps the world has asked you to be stronger with each passing day. But here, at Order Sleep, we wish for something gentler for you. We wish for you to feel peaceful, safe, and happy in every moment of sleep. So tonight, let your heart grow quiet, and let your thoughts slowly drift away. And now, I am going to tell you a story.
In this episode, we've stitched together some of our favourite autumn stories for you all to enjoy, with a continuous backdrop of soothing rain sounds to accompany each tale. They're all stories that I've read, meaning you won't be disrupted by a change of voice at any point. So, settle in and prepare for some autumnal coziness and a good night's rest. The brittle leaves crunch underfoot as you walk down the country lane. Up ahead, you see a sign pointing to your destination. It reads, Gloomy Gourds Pumpkin Patch, and it's carved into a hunk of wood, hung on an old, sun-bleached wooden gate. Far in the distance, forested mountains are covered in a blanket of autumn's favourite colours. The land where you are now is much flatter though, ideal for growing pumpkins. The skyline is a gentle blue, scattered with fluffy, pillowy clouds. Looking down, you spot a perfect maple leaf, dropped here by the red and yellow tree looming next to you. You bend down and carefully pick it up by its stem. Then, you hold the leaf up to the sun's soft light and admire the precision of its form. Unlike the other leaves around it, this one is still firm, but not yet crisp, retaining some moisture from its life on the tree. It seems too beautiful to let go, you think, so you carefully put it into your satchel as a keepsake. As you walk towards the gate, a gentle breeze blows past you. You can feel it through the fabric of your top, so you pull your thin wool scarf a little tighter around you to stay warm. The gate is secured with a metal closure. You slide your thumb under it and raise it gently. It rattles and creaks, showing its age. The gate has probably been standing here on this farm for decades, you think. You pull the latch down to close it behind you. As you turn around, the warm aroma of ripe pumpkins and sweet, crisp apples fills your nose. The pumpkin patch begins with a short dirt pathway bordered by several tall, slender trees. Leaves of red, yellow, brown and orange are scattered across the beige trail. Some crunch beneath your shoes, while others are still too soft to make a sound. You approach a small wooden booth where you can purchase a ticket to visit the pumpkin patch. There's a woman sitting here, welcoming visitors. You greet each other kindly and exchange a few words. Then you pull out the appropriate amount of cash from your pocket and hand it over to her. She smiles, clinks open the metal money box, and hands you a ticket. You rub your fingertips back and forth on the papery ticket for a moment, and turn it over once or twice before slipping it into your pocket. As you pass the booth, more of the pumpkin patch reveals itself. From where you're standing, you can see gourds of many sizes and colours. Small orange pie pumpkins and the pale, eerie ghost pumpkins catch your eye. You admire the uniqueness of the white ones, with their thick black stem handles and glossy sides. You wonder how they might taste. Bitter or sweet, you muse to yourself. It's been a while since you last came to the patch. You almost forgot about all the colours, shapes and sizes that Mother Nature has to offer. Around you are green, speckled, yellow, and even multicoloured varieties. As you glance around, you notice that aside from the pumpkins, there are many more things to see at this patch. Your gaze lands on a white barn with a black roof nearby, almost mimicking the look of the ghost pumpkins. You can also see signs for a corn maze, an apple orchard, hay rides, and a bonfire. There's even an especially cosy area where a vendor is selling treats and warm beverages. You'll definitely make a stop there later, you decide. To your right, you find a big map displayed on a wooden signpost. You trace your fingers over the map to see how to get to the apple orchard, making a mental note of the general layout. You carry on towards the orchard in search of the perfect, crisp red apple. For a little while, you follow a small path that is lined on either side with displays of painted pumpkins, festive decorations, and large hay bales. Looking around, you can tell that it's a rather quiet day at the pumpkin patch. Some families and groups are here, but it's far from crowded. It promises to be a peaceful outing, and that makes you happy. Before long, you arrive at the orchard and notice that it's quite small, with just a dozen or so trees. Each one, however, is dripping with plump ruby apples and vibrant green leaves. Both are also scattered across the faded grass below the trees. A gentle breeze moves through the orchard, and you feel the crisp air brush across your arms. Although you're wearing a warm cardigan and scarf, the light wind still finds your skin in the little spaces between the knitted stitches. But with the soft autumn sun above and the warmth of the wall. You feel tremendously cozy and comfortable. As you walk slowly through the orchard, you see a gleaming red apple fall from a tree in front of you. It bounces from its branch into a pile of leaves. Curious, you make your way over to it. Leaves rustle around your hand as you reach into the pile to pick up the apple. It feels nice and firm in your palm as you turn it around, inspecting it for imperfections. But the fruit is glossy, smooth, and ripe. This particular apple must have been meant for you. Making your way out of the orchard along another dirt path, you soon come to a stack of wooden signs pointing in different directions. One of them reads, "Candied apples," with a large arrow. You'd planned to eat a plain, no-frills apple, but now your senses are tingling. With your fruit in hand, you follow the sign. After a minute or two, you come to the booth. The fruit stand offers freshly prepared, candied and caramel apples with a variety of toppings. But there's also the option to make one yourself. After speaking with the laid-back farmer working in the booth, he hands you a pointed stick made of wood. You take it and carefully poke it through the bottom of the fruit into the core. When you feel the apple is resting firmly on the stick, you slowly dip it into a rich caramel sauce. The scent of smoky, molten sugar reaches your nose, and the sticky, hot liquid soon coats the skin of the fruit. Your mouth waters with delight at the thought of this special treat. As a final touch, you roll the apple over in a bed of chopped peanuts. Now it's ready, you think. You thank the farmer for helping you with the apple. Then you turn away and head for the main pumpkin patch. A pair of kids holding hands dart past you, eager for their turn to make candied apples. Soon you come to a wooden bench which looks like a lovely place to relax while you enjoy your treat. It creaks when you sit down, but is comfortable beneath you. From here, you have a beautiful view over the patch. There's a straw scarecrow dressed in linen overalls, surrounded by hundreds of orange pumpkins, some big, others small. Glancing down at the caramel apple in your hand, you turn it slowly to admire your work. It's shiny and reflects the soft afternoon light and a single branch of the maple tree behind you. You then bring it up to your mouth, carefully sinking your teeth into its sweetness. It tastes just as good as you remember. You spend some time sitting on the bench and admiring the kingdom of pumpkins in front of you. The mountains in the distance collide with an uneven line of ripe orange gourds. From this perspective, it looks as though a jumble of curly and straight stems are poking up into the skyline. The whole place smells of autumn. There are hints of cinnamon and apples, and the earthy aromas of caramel and pumpkin spice. They mix with notes of fallen leaves, rich soil, and straw. Everything about this moment makes you feel warm and cozy. You'd like to go and pick a pumpkin to take home, but you decide to wait a while longer. You don't want to carry around a heavy gourd when there's still much to explore here. For now, you'll just consider what kind of pumpkin would be best to choose. As you continue looking out at the patch, you watch families, couples, and individuals amble through rows of vines and soil. Some take photographs, while others are in search of the perfect orange squash. They bend down, inspecting various pumpkins, with expressions of curiosity dancing across their faces. Some of the visitors pull small red wagons where their children ride, holding their prized pumpkins. Others choose to carry them, tucked under their arms instead. After a few moments, you lift yourself up from the creaky bench and make your way onward towards the black and white barn you noticed earlier. It's just past the apple orchard you've already visited. Instead of retracing your steps to the right, you choose a path heading left. As the day progresses, the breeze grows crisper. You do up another button on your cardigan to stay warm and snug. Walking in the direction of the barn, you notice a few crows soaring through the sky above you, chattering to one another. You look up at the cloudy sky, admiring how the autumnal sun is beginning to fade away. After another left turn, you arrive at the quaint barn. It's situated in the middle of the pumpkin patch, and it seems like a meeting place for the farmers on staff and families and friends visiting the patch today. You see one farmer standing with his foot propped against the side of the barn as he talks to another. Every so often, both sip from steaming mugs held between their palms. One man is dressed in loose overalls and a brown plaid shirt. The other is wearing blue jeans with a simple shirt tucked in at the waist. Both have on comfy-looking boots. Together, they laugh and chat away, enjoying their warm drinks. The relaxing sound of leaves fluttering in a nearby tree catches your attention. You turn and look just in time to see that some have dropped, twirling and dancing together before coming to rest comfortably on the grass. A few others are tossed up by the breeze and carried in the direction of the barn, drawing your gaze with them. Out of the corner of your eye, you notice a group of horses. They're standing inside of an unpainted picket fence, grazing quietly. You watch them as they take slow, methodical bites of grass and munch contentedly. This makes you smile, and you spend a few minutes admiring them from a distance. One horse is a chocolatey brown colour with a mane to match. The other is golden brown with a blonde mane. A gust of wind tosses the fine hair of their manes into the air. The horses shake their heads to brush the hair out of their eyes, before turning their attention once more to the grass. They truly are majestic creatures, you think. Just then, another farmer comes out from the back of the barn. She begins to brush the chocolatey brown horse, and it seems happy to be receiving this special attention. Thinking it's time to carry on, you leave the horses to their brushing and feeding. All around you, the pumpkin patch is buzzing with activity. You spot a tractor-pulled wagon with hay bales. Families gather one by one for a ride around the farm. You knew these rides were a staple of the pumpkin patch, and you considered going for a ride to feel the crisp October air moving past as you bumped and bounced around the farm. But you decide to leave that activity to the groups waiting now. As families fill the wagon and head out for their ride, you're left alone near the barn. You've got the place almost entirely to yourself. It's so calm. It's no wonder your mind feels serene and relaxed here. A crackling sound drifts towards you from the opposite side of the barn. Remembering the map you saw earlier, you realize that's the direction of the fire pit. You walk over, noticing a bit of smoke rising as the crackling grows louder. You come to a circle made of cut logs, with a medium-sized bonfire glowing among rocks in the middle of it. The familiar aroma of burning wood is soothing to your senses. There aren't many things more autumnal than a bonfire, you think. The entryway to this part of the farm is an arch made of cut wood, decorated with dried corn stalks. There are 2 hay bales on either side of the entrance, with a pretty assortment of squash sitting on top of them. You walk through the archway, admiring the attention to detail here in the pumpkin patch. Fairy lights hang above your head, forming a twinkling square around the fire pit. Below the lights are thick, sturdy hay bales and logs for sitting. Over to your right is a covered area where vendors are serving treats and warm drinks to passers-by. The temperature is growing colder as evening approaches, and you believe a hot beverage will warm you right up. You happily walk over to the covered area, where the smell of cinnamon and spices fills the air. You can still hear the crackling of the bonfire behind you, setting the perfect mood. The menu has been handwritten on a chalkboard, hung on a wooden pillar. You take a moment to read it and see that they serve pumpkin spice hot chocolate, warm apple cider, and coffee. After a moment of contemplation, you decide on the pumpkin spice hot chocolate. You are at a pumpkin patch after all, and their blend is homemade, you read. Plus, you can already smell the earthy, chocolatey aroma, and it seems to be calling to you. The attendant smiles as he hands you your drink. It's served in a dark green ceramic mug with pumpkins painted on it. You pay and thank him before waving goodbye. Turning around, you glance back at the cozy bonfire. You wish you could have one just like it in your own backyard. You imagine yourself roasting marshmallows over the fire, watching them get crispy on the outside before biting into their gooey texture and sweet flavour. You'd have friends around to tell ghost stories at this time of year. You'd sit by the fire, exchanging tales and staying warm with hot cider and tea. The longer nights would feel shorter in good company. You walk across the grass and take a seat on one of the hay bales. As you move your palm across it, you feel the rough, dry texture of the hay against your skin. You catch a whiff of its dusty scent between notes of the hot chocolate you're holding in your hand. You take a deep breath, feeling quite relaxed. Bringing the mug up to your nose, you smell the delicious aroma more closely. Then you move the cup down to your mouth and take a generous sip of the pleasantly warm drink. It soothes you from the inside out as you enjoy it. Closing your eyes, you take a moment to focus on your senses. You can hear the rustling of the leaves in the maple and birch trees around you, and the crackling fire next to you. The scents of autumn surround you, and you feel completely at peace. As the sun fades away and night begins to fall, the fairy lights seem to grow brighter and the fire warmer. It's been a beautiful day, and now you'll sit and sip your hot chocolate, admiring the crispness of the season, the warmth of the bonfire, and the sound of the breeze. Later, you'll find the perfect pumpkin to take home. Who knows? Perhaps you will make that fire pit in your back garden this season, after all. Maybe you'll bring friends round for homemade pumpkin pies and stories. It doesn't have to be a dream, you think to yourself, as the atmosphere of this place fills your senses. You hold the warm mug with both hands. Content and cozy, you sit and thank Mother Nature for the beauty of autumn and the wonderful day spent here at the pumpkin patch. A young hooded crow perched softly in her nest. She was elegant, with glossy black wings and a black head and beak. The rest of her body was covered in grey feathers. Her back was a dark storm cloud grey, and she had a soft pale grey on her belly. When her feathers caught the sunlight, they occasionally flashed silver and green. This crow lived a long, long time ago. She built her nest on the edge of a golden cliff, overlooking the crystalline blue waters of the sea. She spent her days soaring over the beach, searching for bits of seaweed to add to her nest. Or she chatted with the neighbouring birds, who made their homes in the different nooks and crannies along the cliff. It was a beautiful, peaceful existence. There was food and water in abundance, and nothing she had to fear. She lived the life she had always known, with the sun and the sea, and the long, lazy days of what felt like eternal summer. But one day, she became aware of a change in the environment. Sitting in her nest, she noticed a subtle shift in the sea air. It was cooler than before, no longer the soft, refreshing summer breeze, but a wind that felt almost cold. The crow shivered in her nest and buried herself in a blanket of moss. The summer was all she had ever known. Now that cooler weather was arriving, she would have to find another place to nest, at least for the next season. She would then come back to the coast the following year for another glorious summer. After tidying up her nest, the crow took flight. She soared up into the air and took one final, lingering look at the sea. Then, with a sigh, she turned her back to the waves and let the wind carry her south across the land. Although she felt wistful at the thought of the beauty she was leaving behind, she knew in her heart it was time for a change. She was young and curious, and ready for a new adventure. Perhaps she would find strange exotic trees, unlike anything she had ever seen before, and lands even more wild and beautiful than her dreams. As she sailed over the dusty earth and golden fields, the crow daydreamed of the places that awaited her. She imagined tall green trees with twisting, spiraling branches, so many of them that they seemed as infinite as the stars. She pictured vast lakes that mirrored the sky, and snow-capped mountains lining the horizon. And she saw herself in all these magical landscapes, soaring and diving through the air. As she travelled, she would collect all the beautiful things she found, like feathers, twigs, and flowers. She would use them to create a new nest. It would be a cozy home for the winter months, and a work of art that she could be proud of. The land beneath her looked like a patchwork quilt. Yellow squares of wheat stood next to green fields. These were sometimes divided in the middle by long straight paths where people and horses travelled. The land was mostly flat, but she could sometimes detect a rising slope or hill, like a ripple in the fabric of the earth. As she moved further inland, there was more variation. The land went up and down in waves, and the trees became greener and denser. From above, these vast canopies looked inviting. They were the perfect place to build a nest. She could choose any one of these branches and make it her home. But it was too early to interrupt her journey. She was settling into a comfortable rhythm, enjoying the warmth of the sun on her wings and the sight of the ever-changing ground beneath her. She would fly further south. After soaring over the forest, the crow began to follow a winding river. It was a shining streak of blue that curved its way past fields and trees, towns and cities. The sight of water was comforting, as it reminded her of the view she had left behind on the cliff overlooking the ocean. This river was a different shade of blue. It was lighter and more transparent. It moved differently too, flowing slowly but purposefully onwards, creating a path for itself across the land. The ocean waves would roll towards the shore, over and over again, advancing and then retreating. The land and the ocean were two separate worlds, hills. But this river moved through the earth, living right in the middle of the woods and the hills. She found herself entranced by the river's beauty and fascinated by the life surrounding it. She saw wild horses drinking from the sloping banks and young men splashing in the shallows. There were small wooden boats too, carried along by the currents. Some of the boats were piled high with boxes, and one was even being used to transport furniture. The Crow saw a table, some chairs, and cooking pots, all tied together and held in place at the back of the boat. It looked as though someone was moving house and taking their belongings with them. But for the Crow, it was far easier to leave everything behind and start afresh. She was looking forward to creating her new home and decorating it with the treasures she found along the way. It was a chance to change, and it meant that she could travel easily with nothing weighing her down. She was completely free. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the river. The Crow flew down to the river's edge to drink, sipping some of the clean, fresh water. Then she decided to find a place to rest for the night, so she could sleep for a while before continuing her journey south. She had never flown for so long without stopping, and she could feel the tiredness spreading right through her, from her head down to the tips of her wings. Next to the river was a small grove of trees, including an ancient olive tree. It wasn't very tall, but it had a thick, sturdy trunk as wide as a boulder, and plenty of branches. A couple of birds had already made themselves at home, and were resting in the upper branches, their green feathers blending into the leaves. The Crow flew up into the tree and began to explore, walking from one branch to another until she found the perfect spot. There was a long, straight branch that stretched out in the direction of the river. From here, she could watch the sunset over the water. It was the closest thing to the view from her old nest on the seaside cliff. She perched on a comfortable part of the branch and gazed at the leaves and the golden light on the water. She found it so calming that she drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep before darkness fell. When she awoke the next morning, the sun was already high in the sky. The light danced and sparkled on the surface of the river between the passing boats. The Crow decided to continue following the water to see where all the boats were heading. She stretched her wings and took flight, traveling directly above the river and mirroring every bend and curve. she noticed the occasional building near the banks, modest huts and farmhouses. Soon, one house became 2, then 3, then a whole street. The change was so gradual, she hardly noticed until she found herself right over the rooftops of an enormous city. She had never seen anything like it. From up here, the city was a vast maze, an intricate labyrinth of rooftops, columns, domes and towers. The roofs of most of the houses were made of red tiles, a colour resembling the sky at sunset. Then there were the golden domes, shining as brightly as the sun itself. The rest of the city was like an ocean of white marble, flowing over the land as far as the eye could see. There were even a few trees in between the buildings. As the crow glided over the rooftops, she spotted huge palm trees swaying in the breeze, and a square lined with purple jacarandas. But although it was beautiful, the crow could not imagine herself living here. She could admire it from a distance, but she would have to keep searching for a quieter, greener space. After one last glance over the glimmering rooftops, she slowly flew away from the city towards the countryside in the south. She had now lost sight of the river, but there were always new things to look at. There were orchards, vineyards, and fields where sheep and cattle grazed. It may not have rivaled the splendour of the city, but she felt more at home here. Any of these trees would make the perfect place for a nest, but she wanted to travel just a little bit further to see what lay beyond the horizon. As the day went on, the crow began to feel tired and thirsty. She had left the river far behind, and there was no sign of a lake or pond. So she would have to find another source of water to quench her thirst. She flew down and landed on the roof of a country house directly below her. It was a humble home, surrounded by a vast garden filled with cypress trees and acres of vineyard. Looking closer, she noticed rows of potted plants lined up by the walls of the house. They all looked lush, green, and healthy, even though, from the look of the dusty earth, it had not rained in a while. She couldn't see any water, but it had to be there somewhere, if only she knew where to look. Built into the garden wall was a marble basin with a sculpture of a lion's head at the centre. The crow flew over and perched on the edge of the basin. It was damp, but empty. There was a hole in the stone lion's mouth, so it must have been some kind of fountain. But there was no button to press, and no tap to turn. she could cool her feet walking across the damp stone, but she couldn't drink. And in this moment, that was all she could think about, the simple pleasure of a sip of water. She was just about to give up and fly away when she spotted something. In the corner of the garden, almost hidden by the shade of a magnolia tree, was a wooden table. And right there, in the middle of the table, was a large terracotta jug. The crow flew across the garden and landed on the table before hopping up to the edge of the jug. She peered inside and caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the water. At last, she had found something to drink. But the crow's joy quickly turned to disappointment. The jug was only half full, and the neck and opening were narrow. They were large enough for a sparrow to enter, but not a crow. She could see the water, but she couldn't drink it. Her first thought was to push the jug over, but as she tapped it with her beak, she realized that it was far too heavy to move. She would exhaust her strength and make herself even more thirsty in the process. Even if she did succeed in pushing it over, the water would be wasted. It would pour out over the table and onto the ground in a matter of seconds. Then another idea came to her. It was pure inspiration, appearing out of nowhere like a flash of light. If she could not reach the water, she would make the water come to her. Not with force, but with intelligence. There was a small round pebble on the ground near the table. The crow hopped down to pick it up with her beak, and then flew back to the rim of the jug. She opened her beak and let the pebble drop into the water. Just as she had hoped, the weight of the pebble made the level of the water rise. The change was almost unnoticeable, but the crow was sure that this was the solution. With a little work and patience, she would finally be able to drink. The search for stones took time. If the pebble was too small, it would hardly make any difference to the water level. And if the pebble was too big, she would struggle to carry it in her beak. She would have to choose each stone carefully, one at a time. As the crow explored the garden and the surrounding fields, she felt herself sliding into a kind of trance. In the soft, dry heat of the late afternoon, her mind cleared. She forgot about her thirst and everything except her quest. It was a relaxing routine, searching in the bushes and secret corners of the garden to find the perfect pebble, and then bringing it back to the jug. Each time she dropped a stone and watched the water rise up ever so slightly, she was filled with a sense of deep satisfaction. And although she soon grew tired, flying back and forth, she was never bored. With each stone and every journey, she found something new to notice and appreciate. Once she was enchanted by a particular part of the garden, a bench in the shade encircled by wonderfully scented bushes of lavender and thyme. In another moment, it was the colour and shape of the stone that caught her imagination. It lay half hidden in the earth near the vines, and when she pulled it out, she saw that it was a pearly white and as smooth as if it had been shaped by the sea. But as the water in the jug rose higher and higher, it was the act of dropping the stone that gave her the most pleasure. Time seemed to slow down, almost to the point of standing still. She opened her beak to let the pebble fall, and she watched, mesmerized, as it tumbled down. The surface of the water rippled, then slowly became still again. The crow gazed at her reflection and the growing collection of pebbles beneath it, piled up like an underwater mountain. She paused for a moment, feeling happy with her progress and grateful for each and every stone. These were pebbles that others would have passed by without a second thought, but they were invaluable to her. The stones were easy to overlook, but the crow knew that sometimes it was these simple objects that made all the difference. When she built her nest, she often used material that other creatures ignored or discarded, like twigs or pieces of torn fabric. She understood the true value of everything in the world, no matter how ordinary it might appear. By the time the crow dropped the final pebble in the jug, it was dusk. There had once been a patch of shade from the magnolia tree covering the table, but now the entire garden was transformed by the evening shadows. The final rays of golden sunlight were visible on the walls of the house on the far side of the garden. It would soon be night and time for a deep, restful sleep. But first, she would relish this long-awaited drink. After the final pebble had settled in the jug, the crow leaned down and dipped her beak into the water. It was cool and delicious, and left her feeling refreshed after just a few sips. She imagined she could feel the water spreading right through her body, like a deep breath. Now that she had quenched her thirst, she wanted nothing more than to rest. When she thought of taking flight once more and scanning the countryside for a suitable tree, she felt even more exhausted. She couldn't take to the skies again with such a tired, heavy head and such weary wings. Tomorrow, she would continue her search for a more permanent home, somewhere to build a nest for the coming months. But tonight, she would stay right here. It was safe, quiet, and peaceful, and there was plenty of water to drink the next morning. She gazed down into the jug, admiring the results of her hard work. And then the crow noticed that something else had become visible in the reflection. She could see not only the stones in the water and the mirror image of her head, but also the leaves of the tree above. The magnolia tree that had given her shade would also provide her with a place to sleep. When the wind moved the leaves, she could make out the faint reflection of a crescent moon. From this perspective, the moon looked like part of the magnolia, delicately balanced between the branches. The crow took one last sip from the jug and then fluttered up to the nearest branch. There were no other birds in the tree, and it felt like having a large, comfortable house all to herself. She could hear the sounds of distant birds and the hum of insects, as well as some faraway voices. Perhaps they were coming from inside the country house. But in that moment, it didn't really matter what the sounds were or where they were coming from. When the crow closed her eyes, the sounds seemed to fade and vanish in an instant. There was no need to pay attention to her surroundings or to think about anything at all. Her body knew just what to do, to settle into a well-earned rest. Her head drooped down into her chest, and she gently arranged her wings into a comfortable position. And then, after just a few deep breaths, she was fast asleep, cradled by the branch of the magnolia tree. Heavy raindrops tap the window panes near Lily's bed. Every so often, a gust of wind tosses the rain towards the glass with slightly more force. Lily lies under the covers with her eyes closed, listening to the sound of the storm ebb and flow. It's sure to be a blustery day, she thinks to herself. These final moments in bed before she rises in the morning are some of Lily's favourites, when her thoughts are dreamy and her mind still remembers the feeling of deep sleep. Before long, she feels a yawn overtaking her and reaches her arms up and out in a big stretch. Next, she circles her ankles a few times to the right and then to the left, so they're ready to move when she steps out of bed. Lily takes a deep breath in and then lets it out slowly as her body relaxes into the soft comfort of the sheets. Just a minute more, she thinks to herself, with a hint of a smile. The rain taps the window in waves, as though curtains of water are opening and closing overhead. Another large gust of wind rattles the branches of the tree outside and sends a flurry of raindrops towards the house. Days like this are always exciting for Lily, when the weather seems wild and unpredictable. It's as though the rain and wind encourage her to be a bit more spontaneous herself. With that thought, she pushes herself up until she's sitting on the edge of the bed, and then stands, glancing out the window as she does. As always, it's still dark outside. Lily wakes up earlier than most people in town, as she has to have the bakery open and ready by the time everyone else is starting their day. She knows the rest of the neighbourhood is sleeping soundly. Even the house cats are probably dozing in fluffy beds or on pillows by windowsills, waiting for dawn. Lily slides her feet into her comfy slippers and then pads softly into the kitchen. The first thing she does is put on the kettle for a nice cup of strong, hot tea. She leans against the counter as she waits for the water to boil, listening to the bubbles beginning to rumble within. Lily takes out a small metal tea ball from the drawer and fills it with fragrant strands of loose leaf black tea. Each leaf stands at a funny angle in the ball, so she has to be careful not to let any of them fall out as she twists on the top. She hangs the tea ball over the side of her cup by a tiny metal hook and chain. When the water is ready, she pours it over the tea. Bubbles rise up from within the metal ball, and it floats slightly before sinking to the bottom. A fan of tea colour spreads out from it, shading the clear water as it swirls around. Lily lifts the cup to her nose and inhales deeply. She loves the smell of hot tea on a chilly morning. Feeling spontaneous, she decides to skip her usual splash of milk, opting to drink it black today. But still desiring the comfort of her routine, she carries it over to the wooden seat beneath the kitchen window. This is where she always drinks her morning tea, gazing out at the sleepy neighborhood on the other side of the glass. Some mornings, the first rays of light would already be shining through the clouds by this time. But today, the sky is heavy and dark. A blanket of grey clouds hangs low over town, and the rain is continuous, shifted only by the ever-changing wind. She can see how it bends and sways the branches of the tree across the street. It's definitely coat weather today, she decides. Lily sips her tea slowly, feeling herself warming up a bit more with every drop. She wiggles her toes inside her fuzzy slippers, enjoying the way it sends a tingling sensation across her skin. This is the most perfectly cozy morning, she thinks to herself. When she finishes her tea, she washes out the cup and sets it to dry on a bamboo rack by the sink. Although the sun hasn't come out yet, Lily knows it's time to get ready to head down to the bakery. After so many years of opening her shop each and every morning, Lily feels as though she has an internal clock that's calibrated to the second. She intuitively knows when she should be finishing her tea and when she needs to step out the door in order to make it to the bakery in good time. Lily shuffles into her bedroom and picks out a grey shirt to wear. It's a fitting colour to match the weather outside. When she's dressed, she heads to the front door. She slips on her thick wool coat and buttons it up at the front. Then she wraps a chunky, cable-knit scarf around her neck. One of her regular customers, Rose, made it for her 2 winters ago. Now, it's one of her most cherished pieces of clothing. Every time she pulls it on, she thinks of all the people she's able to call friend, and it makes her feel warm and toasty inside. Lily pulls one edge of the scarf up over her chin, and then tucks the ends into her wool coat. She takes out a large pair of gloves from the coat pockets, slipping them on one by one. The last thing she has to get is her trusty yellow umbrella. Now, she's ready to head out. She closes the door behind her and pauses on the front step to open the umbrella. The wind pushes against it, making it hard to raise the slider up to expand the canopy. But with a little determination, Lily gets it open, adding a splash of yellow to the otherwise dark morning. Bracing herself against the wind, she steps out onto the sidewalk. Heavy raindrops thunder against the fabric of the umbrella. The sound is magnified beneath it, so she can hear the plop and splat of every drop. On her right, she spies the small white cat that's always waiting for her in her neighbour's window. But this morning, the cat is still asleep in the warmth of the house, with its pink nose tucked under its fluffy tail. Usually, the cat is awake and washing its paws, or following her path with watchful eyes. But today is a lazy day for the white cat. Lily watches as it naps contentedly behind the glass. For a moment, she wishes that she too could be at home, tucked up in bed. But then she thinks of her regular customers, and it brings a smile to her face. They are the reason she gets up each and every day, rain or shine, and opens the door to the rainy day bakery. She continues walking down the wet pavement towards town. Every few steps, she has to move to one side or the other to avoid a large puddle. The sidewalk glistens in the glow of the streetlights, and still the sun is nowhere to be found. This will probably be one of those days where it stays dark until noon, she thinks. Up ahead, she catches a glimpse of the brightly painted bakery door. Even in the dim light, the brilliant colours stand out, welcoming in all who pass by. It's a haven for people on a day like this. They can come inside, drink a cup of something hot, and have a slice of pie or a cinnamon roll, and read a good book. Some customers prefer to chat to one another, enjoying the company of new friends and old in a familiar place. Her bakery really has become part of the fabric of this community, she realizes. It's a home away from home, a spot where everyone can find something to make them feel happy and content. Just as this thought crosses her mind, a gust of wind rumples the fabric of her umbrella. The handle jumps in her fingers, and before she knows what's happening, the top canopy of the umbrella has blown backwards. No longer protected from the rain, Lily makes a dash for the colourful door. She pulls out her set of brass keys and inserts the right one into the lock. She clutches her bent umbrella under her arm and pushes open the door to reveal the dark, silent bakery. Lily wipes her feet on the entry mat so she won't leave quite as many wet footprints in her wake. Then she flicks the light switch with her fingertip, illuminating the small shop. Now that she's able to see a bit better, Lily looks down to inspect the damage to her yellow umbrella. Unfortunately, several of the connecting pieces of metal are bent in the wrong direction. Also, the slider no longer catches, so the canopy doesn't stay propped open anymore. With a sigh, she places the umbrella down on the ground in the entryway. It has served her well for many years, but it's time for a replacement. Lily had planned to be in the bakery all day, so she isn't sure when she'll have time to shop for a new one. It might end up being a very damp walk home tonight, she thinks to herself. But that's all right. She's used to the weather here, and she'll just have to make the best of it. Lily takes a deep breath to clear her mind, and then exhales, refocusing on the tasks of the day. She smells the familiar hints of espresso beans, flour, and pecans, lingering from the evening before. On a typical day, she makes cinnamon rolls first thing. But like with her tea, she's feeling spontaneous. Maybe it's the wind or the rain pattering heavily on the ground outside. But Lily thinks it's time for a change. She heads into the cozy seating area and leans down to plug in a strand of fairy lights. Within moments, they twinkle on overhead like diamonds. With a bit more pep in her step, she walks back into the pantry. She runs her gaze over the shelves, stacked high with baking supplies and ingredients. But what do I want to make today? She whispers to herself. She made a blueberry pie 2 days ago, lemon squares and pecan rolls yesterday, and chocolate muffins last week. Those are all favourites with the customers. But then, Lily considers what would make her happy. A few years back, Lily found her grandmother's cookbook on a shelf in the family house. While she was leafing through it, she came across a recipe she'd never tried before. It looked intriguing, so she marked her place with a piece of scratch paper in the spine. Lily's grandmother's cookbook now resides on a dark wooden bookshelf standing against the back wall of the pantry. With a smile, Lily walks over to the book and opens it to the correct page. The recipe is simply titled Baked Apples. In the margins of the page, yellowed with time, Lily sees her grandmother's recognizable scrawl. Her note reads, "Perfect for a chilly autumn day." Here and there across the page, her grandmother wrote in corrections to the original recipe, little tips and slight changes of measurements to make the final product even better. This is what I'll make today, Lily decides. It's time to try something new. The ingredient list is fairly simple. She needs butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, rolled oats, chopped pecans, and several large apples. Lily gathers the ingredients and carries them back behind the counter. She leaves the butter out to soften. Then she begins preparing the nuts. She chops them coarsely and sets them to the side before measuring out the oats. Finally, she turns on the oven and leaves it to preheat. The next part of the recipe is a bit trickier. She has to core the apples and make a pocket for the filling without splitting them in half. Her grandmother wrote in the margin beside it, "Used paring knife and spoon," it instructs her. Lily picks up her paring knife and inserts the tip near the stem of the first apple. She slides it in and cuts in a careful circle around the core. Then she twists it slowly to help the core detach closer to the bottom. With a gentle pull, it comes free. The hollowed out apple reminds her of a pumpkin with its seeds removed. She sets the fruit aside and moves on to the next one. Soon, the task feels routine. She's able to remove the core with one swift movement, over and over again, until she has a row of apples ready to be filled. Next, it's time to make the filling. Lily gathers the softened butter, sugar, cinnamon and nutmeg and mashes them all together with a wooden spoon. When the spices are evenly distributed, she stirs in the oats and pecan pieces. Then she takes a spoon and carefully stuffs the filling into the apples, right up to the top. When the apples are prepared, she lines them up carefully in ceramic pie dishes. Lily pours water into each dish, so the bottoms of the apples are just submerged. Prevents drying and burning, her grandmother wrote. Finally, she's ready to put them into the oven. She slides her hands into thick oven mitts and places the pie dishes on the metal racks. Lily closes the oven door and sets the timer to let her know when she needs to check them. As she's beginning to clear up her workspace, she hears the door to the bakery creak open. It's Rose, one of her favourite customers, and someone she now considers a friend after all these years. Rose smiles and waves from the door before unwrapping her scarf and hanging it over the back of a chair. Lily has her coffee ready by the time she's heading over to the counter. Rose thanks her with a warm smile and then asks how Lily's day has been going so far. Lily tells her all about the baked apples from her grandmother's recipe. She's excited to have her first taste tester if Rose is interested. The pair chat about the weather and how it's an especially blustery autumn day. Then, with a sigh, Lily mentions her broken umbrella. "I don't know if I'll have time to replace it before I head home tonight," she says. Rose pats her on the arm. "I'm sure it will all turn out just fine," she replies, before carrying her coffee to her table and sitting down. Soon after, one of the other regular customers, Seamus, arrives. Lily brings him his coffee and promises him a baked apple when they're out of the oven. One by one, all of her morning customers file in. Some of them look like they've run through the storm, wearing coats splattered with raindrops. Others carry folded newspapers over their heads or open the door to shake out their umbrellas. She serves them a variety of coffees, teas, and sweets. When the timer goes off, Lily turns away from the seating area and faces the oven. She carefully pulls out the pie dishes filled with apples, which are now soft and gooey. Out of the corner of her eye, Lily notices Rose speaking with different customers. She wonders what they're all talking about at this time of the morning. But it's just a passing curiosity as her mind returns to the task at hand. She carefully plucks the apples out of the water-filled pie dishes and sets them on individual plates. Then she walks over to the refrigerator and takes out a carton of whipping cream. She pours some in a bowl and spoons a bit of sugar on top. Then she uses a handheld mixer to beat it into whipped cream. The mixer drones on as the beaters spin, and Lily watches Rose head out the door. But she hasn't even tried her baked apple yet, Lily thinks. When soft peaks form in the white cream, she stops beating. With a metal spoon, Lily drops a dollop of whipped cream on every apple, along with a drizzle of her famous caramel sauce. The warm fragrance of the hot apples and rich cream is tantalizing. It permeates the air, creating an atmosphere of homey comfort. She carries the first plate out to Seamus and sets it in front of him. Next, there are plates for the family in the corner, the woman with the newspaper, and the man who usually orders cranberry scones. As she's distributing the apples, Lily sees Rose walk back through the door. In her hand is a long, thin package wrapped in shiny paper. Rose beckons to Lily, who comes over. "This is for you," she says, handing her the package. On it is a handwritten note. "To Lily, from all your friends at the Rainy Day Bakery." Lily pulls open the paper to reveal a brand new umbrella inside. This one is green with yellow polka dots and a handle in the shape of a duck's head. "This might be the most cheerful umbrella I've ever seen in my whole life," Lily tells Rose as she admires it. "Thank you all so much." Looking around the room, Lily can see that the other customers are smiling widely too. This was a present from all of them, she realizes. A present from all of her friends. The thought fills Lily with warmth and joy. This place and these people give her a true sense of belonging. "I've got something for you too," she tells Rose with a wink, handing her one of the last 2 baked apples from her grandmother's recipe. The other Lily keeps for herself. Together, they sit by the window, gazing at the wet, grey and windy day outside. But here in the rainy day bakery, everything and everyone is safe, warm and loved. Lily uses a spoon to scoop out some of the soft apple and gooey filling. It's perfectly spiced and deliciously sweet. And it's made even more so, knowing that her grandmother guided her along the way. And she's sharing it now with the best of friends. Imagine yourself sitting on a bus in London on a damp autumn afternoon. You've found a seat on the top deck at the front, so you're surrounded by windows. It feels a little like flying, slowly gliding through the streets of the city, past distinguished white buildings and the sensationally red leaves of the plane trees. It's cool outside and raining lightly on and off, the typical drizzle of an English autumn. But the bus is warm and cosy with all the heaters on. This difference in temperature makes the glass steam up. Every now and then, you brush your hand against the window next to you, clearing the moisture so you have a better view. You're in a relaxed, dreamy mood. All you want to do is watch the world go by, enjoying every detail, from the street signs to the pigeons perched along the window ledges. Your gaze drifts down to the people walking in the street below, covered up with coats and umbrellas. And then you look up again to the scenery right beside you. Because you're on the upper deck of the bus, you're at the same level as the second floor windows of the buildings on the street. When the bus is moving slowly or stopped at a traffic light, you can see inside offices, hotel rooms, and even people's living rooms. A few of the windows offer homey scenes. The bus slows down and stops at a red light. You clear the condensation from the glass with your fingers, creating a clear circle in the window, and peer through. You now have the perfect view into the window of a cozy flat where you can see a study lined with bookshelves. A tall standing lamp is switched on, as well as a couple of smaller table lamps which shine with a warm yellow light. You can see an elderly man sitting at a desk, deeply absorbed in his work, with a mug of tea or coffee next to him. He's leaning over the pages of a large book, his index finger following the lines of text as he reads. There are some pictures on the wall behind him. A portrait of a woman and what looks like a print of an old map. But then you feel the engine of the bus rumble into action as the light turns green. You're off again, leaving the man and his study behind. You love getting these little glimpses into people's lives. They're like portals into other worlds, revealed for just a few fleeting seconds. Late afternoon is the perfect time to gaze through windows. It's too early for people to close their curtains, but the fading daylight means that all the lights are switched on, so the rooms are illuminated. The bus soon halts again. It's stuck in a bit of traffic, and you gaze through another window to find a young woman playing the harp. She's perfectly framed in the glass, and the ceiling lamp above her shines down like a spotlight on a stage. It seems almost intentional, a silent performance for anyone passing by on the bus. You watch her fingers glide across the strings in quick, flurrying movements and try to imagine the sound of the music. For a moment, the noises of the bus disappear, replaced by the beautiful, soaring melody of the harp. Then, the bus moves on, slowly and purposefully, making its way through the city streets. But these moments of peace stay with you. You feel comfortably cocooned in the warmth of the bus, happy to let the world pass by outside, like scenes from a slow, relaxing film without a plot. You enjoy watching through the windows, but you can also daydream, perhaps even closing your eyes for a while and resting. When you next open your eyes and look out the window, you recognize your surroundings. You see the familiar, shining colours of the London Underground sign, red, white and blue. You've arrived at Victoria Station. You could get off here and get on the tube to explore the area further. It seems to have stopped raining, and people in the street are putting their umbrellas away. But you're so comfortable on the bus, so you decide to stay for a while longer and see where it takes you. The bus continues through the streets of Westminster, and at the next stop, it fills up with tourists. You can hear all sorts of different languages being spoken in the seats behind you. The musical lilt of French and Italian, and a couple of other languages you don't recognize. You may not understand the tourists' conversations, but you can tell from the tone of their voices that they're happy and excited to be exploring the city. They're transfixed by the view from the window, pointing to signs for Buckingham Palace and Westminster Abbey, and looking out for other London icons like red telephone boxes and black taxi cabs. you turn around and see a child sitting behind you, her face pressed to the glass. In this particular moment, there's nothing special outside, just a red brick apartment building and a woman coming out of the front door, walking a small black dog. But the child is staring through the bus window, fascinated, as though she wants to absorb every little detail of the city. She seems to understand that these ordinary places are part of London too, just as representative as any famous site or tourist attraction. You're tempted to stay on the bus and continue this relaxing city tour, but you decide to make the most of the remaining daylight and take advantage of the fact that the rain has paused, at least for a little while. As the bus pulls up to the next stop, you carefully make your way down the narrow steps and through the open doors into a quiet street. On the other side of the road, there are no buildings, only an endless line of golden trees. This is St. James's Park, the oldest royal park in London. You cross the street to the entrance and walk slowly down a wide, tree-lined avenue. This park is usually full of people, office workers enjoying a lunch break, or tourists on their way to Trafalgar Square nearby. But the recent rain means that this afternoon it's quieter than usual. There are only a few people near you. A couple walking arm in arm, and a family of tourists wearing plastic ponchos for the rain. As you continue down the path, looking all around, you notice other signs of life. There are pigeons pecking at the ground beneath a bench, and tiny sparrows flitting between the trees. A small grey squirrel hops across the path in front of you, and then stops just a metre away from where you're standing. The squirrels that live here are so tame and so used to the presence of humans that they'll even take food right from your hand. This squirrel pauses to look at you, its nose twitching, and then it scampers away, over the grass and up the trunk of a large tree, until it's lost among the leaves. But once you've spotted one squirrel, you start noticing more. Suddenly, they seem to be everywhere, crouching in the grass or running up and down tree trunks. It's enjoyable to watch them, following their quick, nimble movements across the park. You're struck by their sense of purpose. Unlike the pigeons, who sit or walk around in aimless circles, each squirrel seems focused on its own secret mission, darting quickly from one place to the next. You follow the path round the park, taking care as you walk across the damp, fallen leaves. The air is growing cooler, and you sense that it's about to rain again. but you'd like to explore a bit more and see one of the most famous landmarks here. The park is divided by a beautiful long lake. Passing through the trees, it seems to appear out of nowhere. A large expanse of still water, reflecting the grey clouds that drift slowly through the sky above. You walk towards the water onto the low footbridge that crosses the lake. This bridge offers the best views. On the other side, at the far end of the park, you can see